Hello and welcome to another deck build for Magic the Gathering from D6 Damage. Today I've got a green-black deck themed around the Deathtouch ability. Deathtouch is a creature ability. What it means is any amount of damage dealt to a creature is enough to destroy it. So this allows low-power creatures with 1 or 2 power to kill much larger things. This is a 60-card deck which is legal for modern play. Let's start by looking at the creatures. I have 17 of them in the deck. First up, there's Fetid Imp. This little guy will cost you 1 generic mana and 1 black mana to play. He has flying, and you can tap 1 black mana to give him Deathtouch until end of turn. There are 2 of them in the deck. Next up, there's the Deadly Recluse. This spider costs 1 generic mana and 1 green mana to play. It has reach, which means it can block as though it had flying, and Deathtouch. There are 4 of them in the deck. Alright, now we have one of the most important cards in the deck, Glissa the Traitor. This zombie elf costs 1 black mana and 2 green mana to play. She has First Strike, which means that when she fights another creature, her damage will go in first, as well as Deathtouch, which means any amount of damage from her is enough to kill whatever she's fighting. Glissa's final ability is that whenever a creature an opponent controls is put into the graveyard, you may return a target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. This opens up some interesting combinations. There are 2 of them in the deck. Alright, now on to Sangromancer. Sangromancer costs you 2 generic mana and 2 black mana to play. This vampire has flying, and a couple of special abilities. Whenever a creature an opponent controls is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you may gain 3 life. Also, when an opponent discards a card, you may gain 3 life. Because the point of this deck is to kill off your opponent's creatures, she can really help you gain life and stay in the game, especially if you're taking punishment. There are 4 of them in the deck. Now we have the workhorse of the deck, the Reaper of the Wilds. This Gorgon costs 2 generic mana, 1 black mana, and 1 green mana. Whenever another creature dies, you may scry 1. For 1 black mana, you can give Reaper of the Wilds Deathtouch until end of turn. And for 1 generic mana and 1 green mana, Reaper of the Wilds gains Hexproof until end of turn. There are 4 of them in the deck. Reaper of the Wilds is a great card because she's hard to get rid of. She has Toughness 5, which means she can take a lot of punishment, and the ability to give her Hexproof means that she can't be killed off with spells or something like that. Things like Murder or Into the Maw of Hell, for example. The final type of creatures, is the Sisters of Stone Death. They're very expensive at 4 generic mana, 2 black mana, and 2 green mana. The Sisters of Stone Death have some very interesting abilities. For 1 green mana, target creature blocks Sisters of Stone Death this turn if able. If you pay an additional green mana and black mana, you may remove that target creature that's blocking the Sisters from the game. And finally, for 2 generic mana and 1 black mana, you can put a creature card removed from the game with Sisters of Stone Death into play under your control. She does a lot of damage with 7 power and is pretty tough with 5 toughness. There is 1 Sisters of Stone Death in the deck. Now let's talk about sorceries. There are 12 of them in the deck. First up, there's Prey Upon. Prey Upon makes a target creature you control fight a target creature you don't control. This is really great when used with Glissa. Because she has First Strike, her damage goes in first, so she can take down whatever you have her fight. There are 4 of them in the deck. Next up, there's Rabid Bite. This will cost you 1 generic mana and 1 green mana. When you play Rabid Bite, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. This card is fantastic when used with any Deathtouch creature, because any amount of damage from a creature with Deathtouch is enough to kill whatever you damage. There are 4 of them in the deck. The final sorcery is Treasured Find. This deck utilizes a lot of return from the graveyard. Treasured Find will cost you 1 black mana and 1 green mana. When you play it, return target card from your graveyard to your hand, then exile Treasured Find. This card allows you to get back some of your valuable sorceries, creatures, or artifacts from your graveyard. Because even though there are a lot of kill cards essentially in this deck, it's still possible to run out of them, and it's never a bad idea to be able to return a creature to your hand if needed. There are 4 of them in the deck. Next up, we have Instants. There are 8 of them in the deck. Starting with another return card, Wildwood Rebirth. This lets you return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and all for the low price of 1 generic mana and 1 green mana. There are 4 of them in the deck. The final instant is a kill card called Putrefy. It costs 1 generic mana, 1 black mana, and 1 green mana. This lets you destroy target artifact or creature, and it cannot be regenerated. It's good for getting rid of any artifacts or creatures which are giving you problems. There are 4 of them in the deck. Now on to artifacts. There are 3 of them in the deck. They're all Runaway Carriage. This is an artifact creature of the construct variety, and it has trample. When Runaway Carriage attacks or blocks, sacrifice it at end of combat. It has 5 power, 6 toughness. This is a great artifact to use in combination with Glissa, because she can always pull it back from the graveyard as long as you've killed something. Now on to the final category, land. This deck has 20 land. First I have 4 Foul Orchards. This is a green-black dual land. It comes into the battlefield tapped. The next specialty type of land I have is the Golgari Rot Farm. This comes into play tapped, and when you play it, you return a land that you control to your hand. But you get 1 black mana and 1 green mana out of it. There are 4 of them in the deck. The final specialty type of land I have is the Geier Reach Sanitarium. There are 2 of them in the deck. This land gives you 1 generic mana, but if you pay 2 mana and tap it, each player draws a card, then discards a card. This gives you another way to utilize Sangromancer. Finally, there's 5 basic black mana and 5 basic green mana in the deck. Hopefully this green-black deck will let you kill off your opponents with ease. Thank you for watching D6 Damage. Now if you're interested in character builds or strategy guides for Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder, check us out right here on YouTube.